Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am O'Brien McMahon, and this is People Business. In this episode, I'm joined by David Wood. David has spent over 20 years coaching thousands of entrepreneurs and leaders in 15 countries on how to do what matters, get there faster, and be extraordinary. In this conversation, we go really deep into his latest book, The Mouse in the Room, and we talk about how to have difficult conversations. And this is a little bit of a shorter conversation compared to some of the other ones I've had, but it is an absolute dense masterclass in how to have a difficult conversation. And I mean, I'm going to go back and listen to this again. I think you could listen to this a couple times and get things out of it that are new every time. We talk about the reason you want to have tough conversations and how that actually helps you connect and build better relationships. We talk about how to approach these conversations with humility, how to create some reflection opportunities in the middle of conversations, how to overcome strong emotions, both your own emotions and the emotions of the person that you might be potentially triggering by having the conversation. There's a ton in here. And so I'm going to just jump right into it. I hope you enjoy it. I think everybody can get something out of it. Here is David Wood. David, welcome to the show. Very excited to have you on and talk about tough conversations today. I think this is going to be a fun one. I think this is a critical part of interacting as a human being, and you're the expert on it. So it'll be fun to pick your brain and get into this.
Great. And hopefully we can make it a little sexy and fun for people too. Because I think when we hear tough conversations, the response is like, it's like going to the dentist. It's like, well, why would I want to do that? But the fact is, the tough conversations we avoid are the things that keep us up at night and just kind of weigh on us. And I'm a fan of ripping the Band-Aid off as nicely as possible and getting it done and getting all the benefits of that versus putting your head in the sand, as an ostrich. Yeah. So yeah, hopefully we can make it enticing for people. And my goal is that people leave this interview, this episode, thinking, oh yeah, there's a conversation I do want to have with someone, and it could be a contribution to my life and theirs.
Fantastic. So let's jump in and starting at the beginning, I guess. How did you get into this? I mean, I know you do a lot of coaching work, and it's much broader than just helping people have difficult conversations, but this is a big topic that you have focused on in your work. How did you come to decide that this was so important and was going to be such an integral part and you needed to help people have these conversations?
Yeah. I've been coaching for about 25 years. And I realized as I look back over my life and thought, what do I want to specialize in and what am I really good at? I realized that I'd always had coaches who had encouraged me towards self-expression. Right? You're just speaking up. And initially I thought, oh, I speak up. I'm a very confident person. I've spoken to groups of people. I speak up. But then they had me as an exercise write down the people that I resented. Like, okay, write down. They said, go back as far as since you were born, like just anyone that you wouldn't want to pass on the street or that you wouldn't speak well about. And it took a while, but I started accumulating quite a list. And then my coach was like, all right, now go and call the first person on that list. And I said, hell no, I'm not doing it. This was a guy from high school who'd made fun of me. And we used to be friends, which made it even worse. And he was always one-upping me and said he wanted to fight me once. And I just hated him for 20-something years. And I said, I'm not calling him. And she was trying to tell me that there'd be benefits out of it. And I'm like, well, you call him. But she said, what's the main reason you don't want to call? I said, he's going to think I'm a complete idiot. And she said words that stuck with me to this day. She said, then lead with that. If that's your fear, start with that. And that amazingly gave me access to tracking him down, picking up the phone and saying, hey, I know I haven't spoken for 20-something years, but I just wanted to let you know that firstly, I'm really scared to call you because I'm worried you're going to think I'm a complete idiot for making this call. And it changed everything. He said, oh, really? I'm curious what's going on and how can I help? And I was like, well, all right, I've been resenting you for 20 years and this is why. And you don't have to do anything. You don't have, I'm not asking for an apology or anything. Just this was my experience and I'm letting it go. And I wanted to let you know. And this jerk who I'd hated for 20 years said, wow, well, what can I say or do now to help you or us move forward? He is now a friend of mine from that one call. And because of the program I was in, I did countless of these calls, some of them scarier than others. Some of them were just a little awkward. Some of them, there was, I realized as I got older, there was something I did as a teenager that was illegal and I could be prosecuted for. And I tracked the person down. I didn't come to this decision overnight. It took years to work up to the big kahuna. And I finally tracked them down. I said, look, that thing, it was me. I want to confess and apologize. I'm so sorry. Can I make it right? And it turned out that it wasn't a big deal for them. And they said, look, totally fine. My life is good. And don't worry about it. And I was like, oh my God, like I can't tell you the weight that I had carried. So I'm telling you guys, I'm leading with the scarier conversations, but the more mild ones, like one of your employees is late to meetings, or there's errors in their work, or if you're speaking to power, there's a hierarchy. Maybe your boss is doing something that bugs you, and you feel awkward to say anything. I had one just yesterday. I just got back from Australia. Someone was dog sitting and house sitting for me. And my God, the things I've come across in this house, and I keep discovering little surprises that are not happy, like towels missing and untreated pee stains from my dog on the carpet. And his job was to take the dog out. Like all of this stuff is coming up. It's an awkward conversation to speak about these things with people. But if you don't do it, I find it doesn't feel very good to keep it down and always play small. So I spoke up and I said, hey, some things are missing. This is missing. This is missing. Like, what's going on? And in this case, he's apologized and he's going to pay some money and bring back the key and all sorts of things. But I always say the win is in speaking up kindly as possible. It's called dignity. My voice matters. It's a place to stand. You may not get what you're asking for, but you can't control that. You can control what you say in the world. And so one of my clients she remodeled and had a pristine new floor, and the builders have come in and they've scratched up the floors. They didn't cover them. So she has spoken up and kindly as possible said, this is not okay, and I'd like you to make it right. And she's aware that she can't control what they say, so she's not attached to the outcome. If need be, she'll probably sand the floors herself and then just not pay them the full amount. Right? So she's got options. Don't have to get all angry about it. But just the fact of speaking up often means that my clients and I can sleep better knowing that we've done our part. We've done our half. Then you let the universe do the other half.
Was that your coach's goal? The lesson that she was trying to teach you was just to give you that power back? Or what was the purpose of the exercise for you to call the people on the list?
Well, for that was a company called, and they're still around, Landmark Education. They have a course called the Landmark Forum, which most of my friends have done. I think their goal is to create leaders. I think that's what Landmark Education exists for, is to create leaders who can be at cause in the world and affect change. And one of the ways to do that is and to have a good life is we have to be self-expressed. We have to find those things inside us that we haven't said and then find an artful way to communicate them. I wrote a book that I launched last year called Mouse in the Room, because we all know about the elephant in the room. You see it, I see it, no one's saying anything. Well, we should address the elephant in the room. So I could have just called it that. But many creatures in the room are much more subtle. There might be just things that I'm experiencing, that I see or that I feel. Maybe I'm not even aware of them yet. Like usually what we know is I don't like that person, or I don't want to be around them, or that didn't feel good. That's what we know. You do a little digging, maybe with coaching or therapy, or read the book, and then you find out, oh, I didn't feel valued. I didn't feel respected. When someone's late to the meeting, I don't feel like my time's respected, and I worry that other people are going to be late too, and it'll be a cascading effect. Oh, okay, write this down. And then one reason we don't share these mice is we don't know about them. We haven't worked it out. But once you do work it out, we don't have a roadmap or a simple blueprint to go and communicate it. So it could be a train wreck. If you go to someone and say, look, I'm pissed, we need to talk, it usually doesn't go over very well. So there's actually a free download. I wrote a one-pager that you can download at mouseintheroom.com, and maybe you could put in the show notes, O'Brien. Top left of the screen, because people go, where is it? Top left, Mouse in the Room, free download. And it'll help ask you a few simple questions to help you work out what's bothering you. And then what's a request you could make, and then give you a little tiny formula of how to bring it to the person. And I'll just make it up off the top of my head. It might be as simple as, hey, something's been on my mind and bothering me a bit, and I want to have a great working relationship with you, and I don't want anything in the way. So I thought maybe we could talk about it and just clear it up. Do you have a few minutes right now? Would that be okay? People are either going to say yes, or now's not the best time. Can we talk this afternoon or something like that? And so great, come back, and then you have a conversation. And even if it doesn't go well the first time, because it won't all the time. I had one guy write to me and say, I'm batting 4 for 4. I've used this technique 4 times in 4 difficult conversations, and it went really well each time. So it works. I'd say maybe 9 out of 10 times you're going to get a good result, even if you disagree. And you end up that they don't buy into your viewpoint, you don't buy into theirs, and say, all right, so you're thinking like that, I'm thinking like that, we've talked about it, we don't see eye to eye. At least we know that. And you can be connected and related around that. Or if it goes badly, and 1 in 10 times, maybe it will. Maybe it'll blow up, they get all defensive and they can't listen to a thing you got to say. Doesn't mean you can't have a second go at it. You might come back later, hey, could we talk a bit more about that? I feel like I didn't listen well, or I could have said that better, and do you want to talk? And they'll say yes or no. So anyway, stop me.
No, this is great. I got to, we don't have enough time for me to ask all the questions that I have for all this stuff. Let's talk about how to set this up. So I think you did a good job there, and you talked about how to initiate the conversation, or at least get into the conversation. You know, hey, there's been something that's bothering me. I feel a little uncomfortable, but I want to talk to you about it. Clear the air. Would you mind? Do you have time now or in the future? But I think that's good. What tips do you have for somebody to actually start the conversation and say what's wrong? You know, because I imagine it's not just launch into you're an asshole. You know, there's got to be some coaching point to how to bring up the thing that's been bothering you.
Well, let's go back one step, and I'll ask listeners to pick one thing that you want from someone. There's something you've been like maybe nervous to ask for. It could be from your partner in the bedroom. It could be something you want. Maybe you want more connection with your kid, or it could be you want more money from your boss, or you want to work from home, whatever. Pick something that you want that is edgy to ask for, or something you don't want. Just one thing that someone's doing that's bugging you. As I said that, I thought about a guy who visits across the hall and slams the door when he enters and leaves, right? So that like jumps straight into my head. This isn't rocket science. Something that you don't want, and you might want to ask someone to stop doing, like being late or having mistakes in their work. Have that in mind, because then the rest of this will make more sense and you can think about how to apply it. Then, if from memory, if I go through the form in my head, what's your positive outcome that you're looking for? So you write down the good thing that you'd like to have happen. Like maybe you want to feel better about working with this person. Maybe you want to be able to sleep better at night. Ideally, it'll be something in it for both of you. So it could be a shared goal, like, you know, have our team run smoothly or just feel more connected. My mum and dad aren't into personal growth. But if I said, I'd like to talk about something that just might have me feel more connected with you. Do you have a few minutes? They're not going to say no to that. Right? So the reason you want to have this shared good goal is because you can lead with that and say, here's why I'd like to talk. Because if you just come and say, we need to talk, if you're anything like me, you're going to assume the worst. Mm-hmm. I said to the last person who said that to me, I said, how much trouble am I in? And I think one time he came to me, I was in trouble. And another time I wasn't in trouble at all. This was a stage manager at the theater where I was studying. So lead with that. Hey, I'd like to chat about something, and here's why. My positive intention. And now as an optional, and you'll get all this on the form, but an optional piece, you might, if it's edgy for you, like I was so scared to call that bully from high school. If it's really edgy for you and you feel nervous about it, you might say that. I feel a bit nervous about it because I might not say it well, or, I don't want you to feel offended. So you can say that to show that you're a bit on your edge. And often people give you a lot of leeway once they know that. But then I still circle back around to the positive intent again and say, but I do want to talk about it because I think it's important that we have a great relationship. And so, like, oh, yeah, okay. All right, what you got? Next step might be, is now a good time? And if you've ever studied sales, I think that's called the presumptive close or the assumptive close. Like instead of like, is it okay? You could just say, is now a good time? Assuming that it's going to be all right. And people usually say, yeah, I got a few minutes, or now's not a good time. And maybe you'll work out a time to come back. But this little formula does so many things. When that person says yes, they have now put themselves in at least some form of receptive mindset. And so I'm not a psychologist, but something happens between something being just forced on you and you saying, yeah, okay. They might change their mind 30 seconds later once they hear it, but at least they've said it. And then you can start leading in with, hey, that's how to set it up. If you want more, we can go into how to share it in a way that doesn't blame them. But that would be how I would set up the conversation.
Well, I'd love to walk into that piece. How do you share it without the blame or without triggering the emotion in them as much as you can control that?
The number one thing is to speak about your experience. So this is pretty deep and also maybe life-changing for some people. But a friend of mine used to teach this concept for guys who wanted to date more about getting her world. And I knew the title of the program, Getting Her World, Getting Her World. Those words meant nothing to me. And I'm gonna put you on the spot here, but I'm going to ask you, when you hear that, what do you imagine they're talking about when they say getting her world?
Understanding her point of view.
Yeah. And I'd even go a bit deeper than that. I think we operate in life as if there's a reality. There's one reality that you and I are both experiencing. And I'm not convinced that's true anymore. I don't think it's the same. You and I can look at the same object, same painting, and see something different. We can meet the same person and you love them and I think they're a jerk. This is not debatable, right?
Yeah.
So in effect, I have my own matrix. Great movie. You haven't seen it, go watch it. But I have my own matrix. You have your own matrix. And mostly it overlaps. Mostly we can agree that this is a pen used for writing, right? But other times we can't. So this is a really important concept that I have my own experience. Now, what happens particularly if we're triggered and annoyed with someone, is we start making universal statements and we start talking about this one reality that must be true. And a friend of mine sent me a message recently and she's very upset with a breakup she's going through. And I heard statements like, he is so insensitive, he has dropped me, et cetera, et cetera. They were like statement after statement about complaint about him. And I can relate to that. Sure, I might even agree. But there were no I statements. She wasn't talking about her world. She was talking about this one imagined reality that we all share. She wasn't talking about his world. Nothing about he probably feels this or he might feel that. There was none of that. And there was none of her world. So if she was going to speak about her experience, really simple formula, use I statements. For her, it could be, I feel dropped. I feel abandoned. And if she's going to dig deeper with a coach or a therapist, she might realize, I feel worthless because of that. Now, if you can go in with just speaking about only your experience, here's the huge win from it. It's inarguable. It's funny to me when people try and argue it because it's inarguable.
Yeah, that's a great point.
I feel upset by what happened. Oh, well, but you shouldn't feel because blah, because, well, hang on just a second. I'm just talking about my experience. So can we slow it down a bit? I just want you to understand how I felt. I felt upset when it happened. Can't argue that. I have a right to my feelings. I felt this. And so another little formula is when you said X, I felt Y. Inarguable. If you can stick to that on your one pager for Mouse in the Room, then you're just avoiding a lot of landmines. If you start to say you're always late to meetings, you know how that's going to go. I always hated it when my partner would do universal statements. You always do that. My mind goes straight to yesterday morning at 8 o'clock when I didn't do that.
Yeah.
So it's more, it could be even like it seems to me, and I might even throw in, it may not even be accurate, but it seems to me that you're often late. Yesterday, you were 5 minutes late to the meeting. And I'm not criticizing, right? I'm not criticizing. It happens. I'm sometimes late. When it happens, I feel like my time's not being valued. And so what I would love and request, and this is a pro tip, which is again on the form, have a request. Don't just complain. Here's what I would ask for. Show them a way they can win with you. What I would request and appreciate, if you start getting to meetings 5 minutes early and be an example for everybody else, including me, that this meeting matters and that all our time matters and we're going to come together for a shared purpose. I do worry that when someone's late, other people might be like, oh, it's okay, maybe I'll be late. And then imagine where that ends up. You know? So what do you think? Like, are you willing? And then, they'll say yes or no. And then another pro tip that most people will miss, check in with them and find out their mice. Like find out how this conversation was for them. And a really simple way to do it is, I'm just curious, how is it for you that I'm bringing this up and asking? And I might even give a menu of options. Is it annoying? Is it embarrassing? Are you thinking this guy's totally wrong and off base? I really want to hear how it is for you. Check in with them and give them a chance to speak. They may not offer it, particularly if you're their boss or there's some kind of power hierarchy. This person who looked after my place is someone who I could get work from. So there's a power hierarchy. It's difficult to speak up to power. So you can make it easy for people by, how is it that and they may not even know how to answer that because no one's ever asked that.
Yeah.
No one's ever said like, how is it for you that I brought this up? How is it for you to have this conversation? In fact, I did. Okay, I'm patting myself on the back. When I did get home and I found a whole bunch of stuff wrong, it looked to me like he wasn't taking it very well and he wanted to rush and get out of the house. And I said, well, hang on, can we slow it down a second? I'm feeling annoyed and I'm triggered and I'm having my experience and I'm adjusting, right? It's taken me some time to adjust. But how is this for you? How is it for you right now? And he got to share his experience and we got to connect over that rather than him just slinking out and being this massive divide. So that I'm throwing a lot.
What was his experience? I was curious. Like how? So you would obviously put him on the spot. He maybe not on the spot, but it was a pressure situation. He was feeling the heat. How did he respond when you asked that?
Oh, he said he felt really bad about it, and explained some context in his life that was going on right now, and you know, he was going to go and sit with it more, and he said he'd make it right. But I think that needed to happen. Now, that was an extreme, obvious example where you could tell something's going on with someone, and I inquired. But what I'm espousing here, and I'm an evangelist for, is when you can remember it, is to check in anytime something seems a little awkward, or, you know, you might notice a facial expression, or someone's not even speaking up in the meeting. This inquiring, just how are you doing? And again, they may not know how to even handle that because people don't ever ask them. So I give them a menu. Now, O'Brien, I know I've thrown out a lot of stuff here. No one has to retain any of this stuff. The one page is very helpful. If you've got $12.99, you want to buy the book, it's called Mouse in the Room. It's on Amazon, and it'll walk you through all of this stuff, give you lots of really simple examples, and hopefully get you jotting down things on paper going, oh, yeah, you know what? And not all these need to be negative. I just flew home to Australia. I haven't said this before publicly. I don't know how this is going to go for me, but I just flew home to Australia. I got back 3 days ago to say goodbye to my father. So he's old, he's ready to go, he's lived a long, good life, and that was a tough conversation to say goodbye and to tell him I'm proud and to hear from him that he's proud. They don't all have to be negative. It could be conversations of appreciation can be awkward and tough. To tell your partner how much you really appreciate them and what they mean for you can be awkward. So I hope if you do decide to get the book, and look, it's not about money for me. I think I get like $3 from Amazon for every book you buy, but it may just change your life and your company. And I hope you end up jotting down like, oh yeah, I could appreciate this person. And then, you know, I did like how he did that. And that bus driver always has a smile. You know what? So you have a little appreciation list, your appreciation mice. And then you'll have a list for your toleration mice. And then you don't have to take on the big ones. Pick the little ones and build up. Or if you're like me, I go in reverse order. I want to do the scariest one so I can just relax about it and work my way down. But I'm beating the drum for more truth and self-expression because I think that's what our world and our hearts could really use. It's not about getting the result. It's not about getting a pay rise. It's about connection.
Have you had people actually use the form in the conversation? So actually like walk into the conversation with that form?
Yeah, and I encourage it. No harm in going to someone and say, can we talk about whatever? And I jotted down some notes because I want to do a good job of this.
Yeah.
I don't want to forget anything. And this is kind of new for me. And so, or it's edgy for me. And so like to have a shot at it. So I might refer to my notes. Yeah.
I just want to make sure I get this right, you know.
Yeah. It's kind of silly to think that after 15, 50, 60, 70 years on the planet of not being trained in how to go and have an edgy conversation, to think that like the things that I threw out in this podcast, there's probably about 20 distinct separate tips. It's like any new skill. It's a lot to expect. As an actor now, I've got I've got a 20-page audition scene, and it seems simple on the surface, just read the lines. But when you dig into it, it's complicated. On this first page, there might be 20 distinct little beats or steps of where to look, where to have a feeling, where to pause, you got to hit the punctuation. Not to mention when you're actually doing it, the blocking. I'm going to stand here and then I'm going to do that. And then maybe I got to be in the camera angle for whatever. It's actually very complex. So why expect that you're going to just go and nail it off the top of your head, which is why I created this one pager. So you got a little roadmap, and you might do it on a phone call. You might do it face to face and like, hey, I wrote down some notes, and if you can just give me a couple, oh, here's another tip. I mean, just give me a couple of minutes to get it out because I may stumble on some of the words, right? I don't have this all worked out.
Buy yourself some time.
Magic words. Magic words. I may stumble a bit on this, so you give me a couple of minutes to get it out. Now they know the deal. The deal is you're going to speak, they're going to listen. And then, when I'm done, I want to hear everything you got to say about it. You probably just doubled or tripled your connection just in saying that. Now you're related, regardless of the content that's going to come. I get pretty fired up about connection because I haven't had it for so much of my life. And you said, how'd I get started in all this? It's because I was raised in Australia as a male, and I wasn't taught to be aware of what I'm feeling and how to communicate what I'm feeling. I was still outgoing and friendly and perhaps charismatic, but I wasn't able to really connect over feelings. And so when I discovered this work, I dove into it head first.
Yeah, I love that. And you've rattled off, as you said, a ton of points that people can go back to. I had looked up that one pager, and as I was reading it, I thought this thing is great. This really does lay it out in a really easy way. And, you've hit on a bunch of points that have come up on this show before as being really important. Connection. I actually just posted on LinkedIn today something about the power of connection and how I think a lot of us have been missing connection, especially through the pandemic and the technology age that we're living in. I think connection is huge. So the fact that we can use these tips to foster connection is fantastic. I think the concept of humility is probably the single biggest thing that has come up on this show that has changed my perspective, and just the power of humility. And I think what you're talking about in the language you use, the tone you've used, the way you approach these conversations, the fact that you are checking in with somebody else on the experience they're having. I mean, it's bringing a lot of humility to a very difficult situation that might have a lot of conflict otherwise. And I think that softens it a lot and makes it accessible. So I think there's a bunch of other stuff too, but I love everything you're saying.
Thank you. It really will, whatever level you're at, we've all got our existing level of comfort with truth telling and self-expression. It's not until sometimes you get into coaching or therapy or do an immersive course and you have this breakthrough into a whole new level that you go, how was I living that way? And so I want to encourage people to go in that direction because it really will change your life. Whatever level you're at, you can start to communicate more. I wanted to give another example with my dad, but because now I've outed him as my dad, I can't. But there was something that I overheard him say that seemed like a really distressing belief that he had about our relationship. And I was like, I can't let him die believing that. And I said to Mum, don't worry, I'll talk to him about it tomorrow morning. If anyone's going to bring it up and find a way to do it, I'll be that guy. And I like being that guy. And I want everyone listening to this to eventually be that person that people say, oh, so-and-so would speak up if that's an issue. You can count on them to speak up in a kind way and do it. So thanks for all these great questions. You've really touched on something that is very dear to my heart.
I know you have to run, but I have one more question because I think there could still be a fear in people's minds on this, where that 1 in 10 that could go wrong, where the person blows up, right? They come back at you, they attack you, they whatever. And do you have any last parting words on how to handle that situation? Because if that's even a risk, that could shut people down because they don't know how to handle that type of a situation.
Yeah. Firstly, if you've done all the things on the form and you've read the book, you are decreasing the chances of that happening by maybe 5 to 10 times, because you're showing some vulnerability, you're showing positive intent, and you're asking for a bit of space to share and whatever. Now, having said that, there'll be the occasional time when someone's just so triggered and they haven't done all the work on themselves and they can't sit there because it's so offensive to them, they just have to. Firstly, on the form, there's a very important question. What could go wrong? So I did say it asks what could go right, like what's your positive intent, your hope for this call. But what could go wrong? Let's get up close and personal with why we've been hesitating and why it's edgy for us and what we're afraid of. The truth will set you free. I'm afraid my boss will fire me. Okay, great. Write it down. I'm afraid my partner will leave me if I confess to an affair. That's valid. Write it down. Now, there's also, if I remember, there's a checkbox that says, I am willing to accept these possible consequences. That's very important. Just as you give them the choice for the conversation, this is your choice to opt in or not. And now there are times when I've opted out. You know, it was a time when I'd arrive to immigration in America and they'd say, are you going to work while you're here in the country, Mr. Wood? Well, I'm going to work on my laptop. But my answer is no, sir. You know, I don't want to have that tough conversation because of the possible consequences. That person I confessed to took me 15 years to decide I was willing to go to jail, to apologize. That took 15 years of pain for me to get to that point. Not everyone's going to make that choice. So you make your own choice, but this form will help you make that choice because you'll have, here's the upside, here's the downside. You've also got what will happen if I don't have the conversation, right? How much pain over the next 20 years if I don't have it? And then you get to choose. And then going in, maybe that negative thing happens. I'm afraid they'll get angry and yell at me. And maybe they get angry and yell at you, but now you'll be a little prepared. You might have even said at the beginning, I'm a bit hesitant to bring this up because I'm worried you'll get angry and yell at me. You might take the wind out of their sails by just saying what you're afraid of up front. But I want to have the conversation anyway because I want to feel closer to you. So less likely they're going to get angry, going to yell at you once you've said that that's your fear. And if they do, I think there are pro tips on that. Are there pro tips on that one pager? One pro tip, if they've just got so much charge that they can't listen, suggest verbally, like not just in your head, but suggest that you switch. So you know what, it seems like you got a lot of feeling about this. Why don't we switch and you go first? And I'll just listen to everything you got to say. And then when you're done, I'll share my side of it. They may not even be able to hear that if they're so triggered. I've seen it before, but then they might be like, oh, all right. But you're trying to create a new deal. You'll speak. I'll listen. I did this with a roommate and we had to end up setting a timer because he couldn't shut up. So I said, would it be okay? We'll set a timer and you'll get 3 minutes. And when it's done, I'll set a timer. That worked for a while. There's just one time he was so charged up. I said, it seems like even after I've heard everything you've got to say, you still can't hear my experience. Does that sound right? And he was at least able to acknowledge, yeah, I guess you're right. I said, then let's stop right now. Okay. And if you have more space later to hear me, let me know. We ended up parting ways because he did not have the capacity for that and we didn't see eye to eye. So we got good information out of that. But I tried everything I had before that. Most people don't try those 10 steps and then you've just got to break up or fire or leave the company or whatever. Oh, God, no.
Yeah. Well, and what you're talking about here is de-escalation, right? And I had a former FBI hostage negotiator, actually the lead FBI hostage negotiator for a long time, a guy named Gary Nessner on the podcast. And one of the big takeaways from that is that emotion and rationality are a teeter-totter. And when emotion is high, you just can't be rational. And you can't be rational if your emotions are high. And so I think a lot of what you're describing is helping bring the emotion down, both your own emotion. I think even just the fact that you're filling out a worksheet brings your own emotion down, allows you to approach in a rational way. And then the way that you're describing this helps bring the other person's emotion down so that you can have that rational conversation and connect as human beings rather than as emotional beings.
Yeah. That's a whole other area. There's a book called From Triggered to Tranquil by Susan Campbell. And I love Susan. She's a very smart woman, and it'll explain how parts of the brain go offline when you're triggered. You cannot be rational. You see the world differently. And so you have to find ways to bring it down before you can actually relate. So yeah, and there's an advanced chapter in my book, Mouse in the Room, because I don't want to overload people with all this info. So the book's written very simply so that you can just practice the basics. And then if and when you're ready, you can read the advanced chapter for some of this advanced stuff. But we can't prep everybody for life. And if it really matters, if the conversation matters, I'd say work with a coach. Work with a coach. I haven't published it yet on my website, but I'm going to publish a package where you get 3 sessions to use anytime over 6 months for a conversation, and I'll role play it with you. I'll role play it. I'll let you have a go at it, and I'll be the other person, and I might give you a hard time. And so you can practice it, and then we'll flip it, and you'll get to see how I might be you. And people have just been blown away, not always from the words, but the energy that I bring and the different energy. And they're like, wow, I just felt so open to hearing you because of how you brought it and you were caring. And I can see a whole different way to go in and access this now. So if it really matters and you don't have to do all this alone. I mean, a book's great for $12.99, but work with someone. And then if the first conversation doesn't go well, go back to your coach, workshop it, and then go and say, can I have a second go at that? I don't think I did a very good job.
Yeah. And I would encourage anybody who really does have a high stakes conversation or something that they think is worth it, but is really upsetting or triggering for them, where you can't get over your own emotion. I mean, that's a great offer, and that would be a great opportunity. And I've helped a couple people in my life role play. I'm a salesperson, so I've done role play, and I've worked with some friends before to role play their difficult conversations. And it is funny. The words aren't really it. The words almost don't matter. It's the energy that they bring to it that is going to either create a good outcome or a bad outcome. So that makes a lot of sense. David, I know you have to go. This has been fantastic. Thank you so much. This was just a masterclass packed into a very, very tight bundle here. So I hope people listen to it. I hope you listen to it again. If you get something out of it, I'm sure you'll get more out of it the second time. And then definitely click the link in the show notes for the one-pager for the book. And I hope everybody has more connection and better conversations.
Well, and also, can I say, I want to help. I mean, I feel like I'm here on the planet to help. And so I hope the book helps you. I hope the download helps you. If you're interested in coaching, if you've got a simple question, just go to Mouse in the Room and click on contact. Actually, david@mouseintheroom.com will reach me personally. Please don't add me to your mailing list. This is my offer to help you if I can answer a question for you. And if you're interested in coaching, I work on the whole person. So I work on the business. I'm a business strategist. And as you can see, I've done a lot of the personal work. So I work on all of you. If you own your own business or you're a successful executive, go to mouseintheroom.com and click on coaching. I have an awesome quiz that will ask you what you want in your life and what's holding you back. And it'll take you about 5 to 10 minutes. Even if you don't want coaching, I encourage you to fill in that form to get information about what this year is going to be for you. And then if you decide you want me to review it with you and see if coaching would make sense on that journey, you'll be able to click and get on my calendar, and we'll have a quick call and see if it even makes sense. So mouseintheroom.com and click on the coaching option. You won't see it on the page because it's all about the book. But if you go into the menu, you'll be able to either contact me, click contact, or click on coaching to get that form, and it's rocking.
Fantastic. Well, David, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And I think this is definitely one of the more practical conversations we've had. So I hope it helps a lot of people.
Woo!
Hey, folks, one last thing before you go. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure to hit subscribe so you can stay up to date with future guests. That's it. Thanks for coming. Go make the most of your business and the people in it.